Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our truly international talk show where we meet and talk to authors from all over the world. We also will talk to book publishers, editors, those who create the covers, anything to do with helping you get your book out. I know we have so many aspiring authors out there that are so close to getting published, and we want to help you get across the finish line. To that end, we brought in a guy who actually got it done, not just once, but several times. Welcome, please, David Will. Now, where are you, David?
Hello, Mike. I'm in Italy at the moment. I'm northwest Italy, near the French border, near Genoa.
Genoa. Okay, very nice. Now, by the way, you had a book come out in January, and here's the cover, which I can't see because I'm very old, but let me see. The Opposite of the Sun just came out in January. And if you don't mind, I want to talk about the other one first, and we'll come back to this one. And let me see if I can say the title. It's Gemmano.
Gemmano, that's it, yeah.
Gemmano.
It's a hilltop village over in the northeastern side of Italy, near San Marino. And it was a part of the Gothic Line during the Second World War. The Gothic Line was one of the German defensive lines as they fought their way back up the peninsula. They retreated back up the peninsula. And the reason I got involved in it is that my father fought in that battle.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, it was a particularly brutal battle, but the extraordinary thing about it is that my father kept a diary throughout it. And almost day by day, so that you almost had a kind of assessment of what had been going on in terms of the fighting on each particular day. It was very kind of hands-on, sweat on the brow kind of thing.
Wow. Now, was your father from Scotland?
Yes. My father was from Scotland. He fought with the Allies in the war. And the Americans and the British were pushing up through the peninsula. We grew up kind of on the story of this battle. He had won a medal there. Like so many of that generation, they found it incredibly difficult to talk about afterwards, obviously. But I did gather snippets, bits and pieces. And long after he died, my stepmother suggested to me that we go to Gemmano and take a look, see what we could see. And that kind of triggered the whole thing. I had in the back of my mind the idea that I might write a book based on his diary, from his point of view. And we drove up into the village and into the piazza, and I stuck my head out the car window. There was this old fella. And I said, is there a museum or a cemetery or anything connected to the battle that was here? He said, well, hang on. And he rushed into the local bar, pulled out a fellow who worked for the mayor, the local council. And they dragged us into the council, and they had written a whole book on the subject. I'm not sure it was selling very well because they were pushing copies of it at us in large quantities. But I'm flicking through it, and lo and behold, I find my father in this book.
Oh, my goodness.
And now the hairs are starting to go up on the back of my neck.
Yeah.
Because here I am in this village I've never been to, in a part of Italy I've never been to, and here is my father in this book. And I'm intrigued, and I start asking the guy questions, of course. And he said, well, if you really want to know, go and talk to the old fellow outside, because he saw the battle as a teenager. And so I went out and I spent about an hour with him. We walked around the walls of the village together, and he talked me through everything that he remembered about it. And it was absolutely fascinating. It was talking to living history. And he was pointing over to a mountain saying, yes, well, the British and the Canadians came down there, and the Germans are retreating over here. And basically what happened was Gemmano was bombarded out of existence.
Oh, boy.
It was like a scene from, those First World War trenches scenes that you see. It was like that. It was appalling. And the villagers had to hide in caves under the crown of the hill. And they hid there. They did have access to water, no food, and they hid there for about 10 days.
Oh my goodness.
And when they came up, their entire village was gone. And he described, and I've never forgotten this scene, he described how his father sat down on the wall of what was left of their house, and he said, next to his dead cow, their one dead cow. And it was the only time he ever saw his father weep, because they'd lost everything. And it was at that moment that I realized that I couldn't write the book from the point of view of my father, that I would have to write the book from the point of view of the local Italians who had suffered this, because they were really neutrals at this point.
Yeah.
And Hilltop Italy, they had nothing to do with the war. And then this wave of violence just swept over them and destroyed them, and then moved on. And it touched me very deeply. And that's how the book came about.
Wow. Now, this is a novel, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It's very much based in fact.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research into the actual details of it, but yes, it's ultimately fiction. Although my father is woven into it.
Well, you have a lot of primary sources for this effort, so that's an incredible study. I can't wait to read it. This is the kind of stuff I read, and it's history. And I had no idea. I never even heard the name Gemmano, right? Gemmano.
That's it.
Yeah. Sounds like a movie.
No, neither did I.
Sounds like a movie, David. Any hopes for that?
Well, I have written a screenplay if anybody's interested, you know.
Any of our viewers out there, you're looking for some material. This is fascinating, David. You are fascinating. I'm glad you're here on our show. Tell me about the other book, the one that just came out, I think, in January, The Opposite of the Sun.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of came out the first book. What I felt with the first book was that I addressed the issues that I wanted to address, but what I didn't get to address was the civil war that was going on in parallel with the Allies fighting the Germans, between fascist Italians and partisan Italians who were seeking to liberate Italy. And I wanted to address that with another book. I thought it was going to be a novel, but there was so much stuff trying to get into it, and a novel just didn't seem right. And in the end, it became this collection of linked short stories instead. And what it tries to do is show a little bit about what it was like for Italians hosting, again, villages who had to host partisans, who had to provide food and shelter for them, but in doing so, brought huge danger down on themselves. And so, and the other thing is the consequences of all of that run through to this day in Italy. It's very profound. So politics still profoundly affected by what went on in the war. And I've tried to get that across in these short stories as well, that generations are affected afterwards.
It's so interesting that every book I read is from the American experience and an American perspective, but what a fresh perspective this will be for someone who studies this period like me. It's very exciting. I had no idea about the Italian Civil War going on at the same time. Now, by the way, David, you were... Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I hope so. It's often not understood that Italy administratively was in two parts at that point. In the north, it was now a puppet state. Mussolini had been taken by Hitler and put in charge of the north of Italy, but the south was now governed by the Allies. So there was this terrible internal conflict going on.
Wow. Now, by the way, I did want to ask you about your business life. You're retired now, but you had quite a business. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I used to own and operate language colleges in Australia and in China. In Australia, I was in Queensland, in Cairns and Brisbane. And in China, we were in the Shandong province. Now, I don't know how good your Chinese geography is. Mine wasn't very good until I went there. Yeah. And it's about an hour south of Beijing. Yeah. There are two main, the provincial capital is Jinan, and the big port is Qingdao. Qingdao, people may have heard of from the Olympics. They had the water sports there.
Yeah.
And they make the Qingdao beer, you know. So
Yeah,
And we operated language colleges there. We were embedded with two universities in China. We offered English and foundation courses, and we were teaching some Mandarin to mostly Russians who came there.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. I learned yesterday that you were in Italy, and when I read about the language schools, I thought, oh no, what kind of indiscernible accent will David have? Will I be able to understand him? I expected Italian or Australian or Chinese even, but you have a Scottish accent, which is a very charming accent. I could talk to you all day, David, but we're really out of time. But your books, the most recent one is The Opposite of the Sun, and the previous one, which is kind of traces your father's life, Gemmano. They're available, I guess, in all the usual places.
Well, Amazon is the place to go.
Amazon is the place to go. Okay, and we'll put actually a link. We're going to publish this video everywhere, YouTube and all these places, and I'll just put the direct link to order your book on there. As soon as I put the link, I'll click and order it myself. It's fascinating. Any last thoughts for our viewers, David?
You might enjoy the lead character in Gemmano. I was very fortunate. I had the opportunity to interview a medium over a period of 2 years. She was a person who could connect to spirits, and she had the ability to heal with her hands, or at least ease pain. I was very skeptical. I didn't believe it, but over 2 years, she convinced me, and she has kind of morphed into the lead character in the book Gemmano, and so that might be interesting to people.
Yeah. Another fascinating twist that I didn't expect. David, we'll have to have you back again. I got a million questions for you, but we are totally out of time. So here's the book Gemmano, and here is